The midday sun bore down on the Utah desert range, drawing sharp heat waves from the earth, like rising ghosts. Dust swirled low along the ground, kicked up by boots and the occasional ATV, but most of the activity had slowed. Lunch was over. Drills paused, and conversation buzzed lazily beneath the shelter tents as Delta Force operators and visiting Marines stretched out in folding chairs. Everyone needed a breather. That's when someone mentioned the impossible shot, candle. At 2,595 meters, said one of the Delta instructors, laughing like it was a joke. Only psychos even try it. A few snorted. One shook his head. You'd be better off throwing the rifle. The flame challenge had been around for years, more legend than reality. A single candle placed almost a mile and a half out. The goal wasn't to hit it with a bullet. That would be easy compared to what was required. The shooter had to extinguish the flame with nothing but the shockwave of the passing round. No direct contact, just raw precision, exact wind reading, perfect elevation control, and timing only a god of ballistics could manage. She could do it. Someone said that she was Samira Torresbrone on a tarp nearby, methodically cleaning her custom Chaytak M200 intervention. Marine recon sniper, on temporary exchange with the Delta boys for a joint exercise. She didn't glance up when they spoke. She was used to it by now. A tall Delta operator scoffed, standing and stretching. She can hit a target at 1,000 great. So can my grandma. This is a different animal. The others chuckled. One leaned in, elbowed his buddy. Let's see if she bites. They sauntered over. The tall one, Staff Sergeant Wayne Bones Callahan, grinned as he pulled a thick roll of cash from his thigh pocket. $1,200, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Says she Mrs. Samira didn't respond right away. She clicked her bolt closed, set the rifle down beside her mat, and finally looked up. Calm brown eyes locked on Bones, scanning him like he was terrain. What's the wind speed at 2,000? She asked, tone flat. Bones blinked. I don't know why. She stood, brushing dust off her uniform. Because I don't miss. That got some hoots from the crowd. Bones laughed, holding up the cash. Well, Torres, you're welcome to prove me wrong. Candles out there? We said it last week. Still standing. No one's even tried. You gonna be the first. I'm not here to impress you, she said, plainly, then nodded toward the range officer. But I'll take the shot. She walked to the supply tent. Inside, her Chadak's hard case waited. The .408 caliber round was brutal. Designed for anti-personnel and anti-materiel at extreme distances. With the right load and the right shooter, it was capable of stunning feats. Torres knew its rhythm. Like a song, its weight, its bark, its recoil. She opened the case, checked everything again, and began prepping her optics. Back on the field, word had spread. Operators and observers gathered behind the spotting scopes. A camera crew from the training divisions set up to record, mostly for laughs. Historic missing coming, one joked. Samira returned with quiet steps, carrying the rifle like it was part of her body. She lay prone at the 2,595 meter mark, adjusted her cheek weld, and inhaled deeply. This wasn't just a shot. This was a message. Bones tossed the money onto a nearby ammo crate, arms crossed, smirking. You sure you don't want a spotter? Someone asked. No, she said simply. I've got the wind. No one knew how seriously to take her. She wasn't flashy. She didn't bark orders or brag about kills. But there was something in her movement, something exact. A stillness that made even the loudest men go quiet. She checked her elevation. Dial again, then her windage. Then she stopped moving altogether. The heat shimmered over the desert. Through her high-power scope, the candle flame flickered gently, like a tiny heartbeat against the void. Then, silence. Even Bones looked serious now. Samira's breathing slowed. She didn't think about the shot. She thought about the rhythm, like a drumbeat in her chest, syncing with the desert air. She felt the rifle melt into her bones. One breath in, hold, and dash crack, the rifle kicked. The round left the barrel at over 3,000 feet per second, carving a path through time and pressure. All eyes locked on the target zone, but it would take several seconds to know. The bullet traveled so far, it might as well have been heading to another time zone. Torres stayed still. Scope locked. The wind paused, then dashed nothing, no flame, just a wisp of smoke curling into the empty blue sky. Someone swore under their breath. She had done it. Bones stared through the scope, stunned. He didn't say a word as he peeled off his gloves and slowly picked up the cash. He walked to Samira and extended it, eyes wide. "God damn," he said. "I owe you a drink. Or 5. Samira took the money, folded it once, and tucked it in her pocket. "I told you," she said. "I don't miss." And with that, she stood, dusted off her knees, and walked off the range while the men watched her like they'd just seen something holy. When Samira Torres returned to the barracks that night, the room was silent. Not out of disrespect, out of awe. Men who'd spent years in combat, seen fire and fury on 3 continents, now watched her like she was something else entirely. Some nodded subtly. One Delta operator whispered to another, "She's not just good, she's the best I've ever seen." The other nodded slowly and added, "And she didn't even smile." Samira wasn't interested in their compliments. She dropped her gear on her bunk, rolled her shoulders, and headed to the small gym behind the mess tent. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while she wrapped her hands and started on the heavy bag. Each hit echoed through the room, controlled, timed, precise. Just like her shooting, Samira didn't shoot for fame. She didn't swing for applause. She lived by a rule taught to her by her mother, a grease-streaked mechanic who fixed semis in South San Antonio. "Don't talk tough," her mum would say. "Work quiet. Let the results make the noise." And she had. From the time she was 8, Samira had been out shooting her cousins with a BB gun in the backlot. At 14, she bought her first bolt-action rifle with money earned changing oil filters after school. At 17, she enlisted. Basic came easy. So did sniper school. She didn't talk much, didn't laugh at the crude jokes, didn't flinch under pressure. Her instructors started calling her the Whisper, not because of her voice, but because of how she moved. Targets didn't know she was there until it was over. She didn't just hit bullseyes, she solved problems. She read heat shimmer, tracked crosswinds like a hunter, and adjusted for humidity instinctively. There were better shots, maybe. But no one processed the battlefield like her. No one controlled chaos the way she did. Her first tour was in northern Syria. She was embedded with a small recon unit, tasked with hunting an ISIS splinter group that had taken over villages and rigged buildings with explosives. She made her first confirmed kill from a window half collapsed by mortar fire 876 meters. Through an arched opening in near zero light, the man had a detonator in his hand. Her CO said she saved 30 lives that night. But the shot that changed her reputation came in Kandahar. A drug lord aligned with the Taliban was using children as human shields, hiding behind a 6-year-old girl as he planned his escape. There was only one vantage point. One shot. Samira took it without hesitation. The round passed between the girl's ribs, missing her spine by millimeters, and dropped the man instantly. No blood touched the child. She walked out safely. That shot circulated in intelligence circles under the title, "Thread the Needle." No one made it public. No medals followed. But after that, when Samira walked into a tent, people stood straighter. No one called her lucky. They called her lethal. Now, on the Utah range, she had pulled off something nobody had ever done before. The candle shot wasn't about combat. It wasn't about saving lives. It was a test of complete command over weapon, wind, timing, pressure, and self. Samira didn't even blink. Back at base, while most were still buzzing over what they saw, others were already asking questions. One colonel reviewed the video frame by frame. Another called a friend at SOCOM. The shot was impressive, yes. But who was this woman, really? And what else was she capable of? That night, Samira sat alone by the weapons locker, rifle case open beside her. She cleaned the Chaitak in silence, motion by motion, like a ceremony. Not because it was dirty, it wasn't, but because it grounded her. Every mark on the rifle meant something. Every scratch told part of her story. She pulled out a notebook, black leather-bound, pages filled with calculations, corrections, and range data from every location she had trained in Afghanistan, Arizona, Alaska, and now Utah. She flipped to a clean page and wrote only one sentence. Distance doesn't matter if your mind is steady. She stared at those words for a moment, then closed the book. Behind her, footsteps approached. Bones, no longer grinning, no longer cocky, just quiet. "You free tomorrow morning?" he asked. Samaya looked up. "Why, we're running a wind interference drill. 35 mph crosswinds, shooting from elevation. We could use another set of eyes." She tilted her head. "Just my eyes." He gave a thin smile. "And your trigger finger?" For a moment, she considered it, then nodded. 0600, he nodded back. 0600, as he walked away, he called over his shoulder. "By the way, I owe you another 1,000. The pot doubled after the shot. Everyone bet against you." She didn't answer. She didn't care. It was never about the money. It was about the moment, the wind, the silence, the proof. Samira Torres had walked into a field full of the most elite shooters in the world. She had laid down calmly focused and changed their understanding of what was possible, and she was just getting started. The next morning, the range felt different. The desert air was colder, sharper, and filled with expectation. The sun had barely risen, but a dozen elite operators were already gathering near the steel tower that served as the elevated shooting platform. Thick gusts of wind whistled past the aluminum beams, rattling the chains that held down the gear crates. Bones stood at the edge of the platform, arms crossed, watching the flags flap furiously along the hillside. 35-mile-per-hour winds, constant shift, zero predictability. He glanced down at his watch. Right on time, Samira walked across the gravel path, wearing a snug fleece, tan tactical pants, and a black ball cap. Her rifle case was slung over her shoulder, hand steady on the grip. She moved with quiet certainty, as if she'd done this exact walk 1,000 times before. Everyone noticed. Torres. Bones greeted, motioning toward the platform. "Today's shot isn't fancy. No candles, just hard wind and even harder math." "Distance?" she asked. 1,800, but we're firing from elevation, 80 feet. "Up." She nodded and followed him to the top. Two others were already prone on the steel grating, fighting their scopes. Their bullets scattered across the terrain, each struggling to compensate for the brutal crosswinds pushing from the west. Even the best shooters were hitting 5 to 7 feet off center. A few shook their heads and reset. Samira laid out her mat, opened her case, and began assembling her Chaitak, with a calmness that made the others pause. She didn't rush, she didn't stall. She simply worked. "Conditions are ugly today," Bones muttered beside her. "Even the regulars are missing." She looked through her scope and tracked the shimmering mirage in the valley below. Her brain immediately mapped the wind in layers. High cross-push, ground pull. Invisible swirls near the rock formation at 1,200 meters. To most, it looked like chaos. To her, it looked like a rhythm waiting to be broken down. "I'll take a 0.5 mil left hold," she said, almost to herself. Bones blinked. "That's bold. I didn't say it would hit. I said, I'll hold it." She breathed in, exhaled slowly. Then fired. Crack. The recoil rippled through her shoulder, but her position didn't move. She stayed glued to the scope. 3 seconds later, a sharp ping echoed through the valley. "Hit," called the spotter. "Dead center," someone cursed. Another muttered, "No way." Bones chuckled. "Well, hell, she's doing it again." But Samira didn't smile. She simply adjusted for the next shot and fired again. Ping. Another center hit. The others began watching her more than their own scopes. It wasn't just her shooting, it was her presence. She didn't seem surprised when the bullet landed. She looked like she expected it, like she knew the wind was going to listen. After the fourth shot, Bones leaned in. "I'm not trying to push anything, but you ever think about taking this further?" She stayed quiet, waiting for him to explain. I'm not just talking Delta, he continued. There's a unit. Doesn't officially exist. We're not allowed to recruit for it directly, but sometimes they ask us to observe. Her eyes narrowed. Black cell. Bones didn't confirm or deny. What you did with that candle, ... They're calling it an aerodynamic kill. The way you understood the air like it was talking to youth, that's not normal, and that's exactly what they're looking for. Samira rolled her shoulder and returned to her scope. I'm not a ghost. I like knowing who I work for. That's fair, Bones said. But they don't ask questions. They let you do what you're best at. What if I say no? He shrugged. Then nothing changes. You'll still be the one who smoked the candle. You'll still be the quiet legend that made everyone else rethink what's possible. She didn't respond. They continued the training run until noon. Her accuracy barely wavered. Everyone else adjusted, sweated, and recalibrated. Samira made it look effortless. It wasn't she was simply prepared in ways no one could understand. After the drills ended, she walked alone to the far end of the range. The wind had calmed, the heat rising again in shimmering waves. She sat beneath a lone utility pole and pulled out her notebook. On the last page she wrote, "Distance is just outstretched thin, break it." She closed it slowly, then looked up. A black SUV rolled down the dusty access road. No markings, tinted windows. It stopped near the observation tower. 3 men stepped out. Not officers, not enlisted, not regular. One of them glanced her way, then said something into his earpiece. Samira stood. She knew what this meant. She had hit the candle, hit the impossible wind target. Now the real test was coming. Not a challenge of skill but of commitment. Of choice. As the SUV door opened again, she didn't move. She waited. Not like a soldier waiting for orders, but like a hunter who already saw the next shot. The man who stepped out of the black SUV wore nothing that gave away rank or branch. No patches, no name tag. Just plain tactical khakis, black boots, and a pressed grey shirt. His short beard and steel grey hair made him look more like a contractor than military, but his posture screamed control. He wasn't there to make friends. He was there to make decisions. He approached Samira without hesitation. The other 2 men flanked him, but didn't speak. They simply watched. Her eyes sharp, hands relaxed near their hips where concealed holsters likely sat. Sergeant Torres, the grey-haired man, said. She didn't confirm or deny. She just looked at him. He handed her a folded slip of paper. Inside was a GPS coordinate, a date, and 1 word: accept. No signature, no explanation, no agency name, just that. You'll be there if you want to go further, the man said, voice steady. If you don't show, nothing changes. You return to your unit, and we forget the candle ever happened. What's at the coordinates? She asked. A rifle, and a question. The man turned, walked back to the SUV, and left without another word. Samira stared at the paper for a few seconds, then tucked it into her pocket. She didn't tell anyone about the note. Not Bones, not her CO, not the Marine she occasionally sparred with in the gym. That night, she sat alone in her bunk and stared at the wall, letting memories wash over her. Not the kind people post online, but the kind that stick to your bones and change the way you sleep. It was 2021 in Kandahar when it first hit her how fragile precision could be. The village was silent, its alleyways littered with spent brass, shattered clay pots, and makeshift barricades. Her unit had been tracking a high-value target for days, and the intel was thin. The men moved constantly, switching compounds, never staying long. But they had eyes on a likely hideout 2-story building, middle of the block, reinforced windows. A child had been spotted inside. They waited, then movement. Through the scope, Samira watched him enter a second-floor room, holding a radio in one hand and dragging a girl with the other, 6 years old, thin, crying. A scarf wrapped around her eyes. He positioned her in front of him like a curtain, a meat shield. The orders were clear: do not fire. But then he raised the radio, and the spotter confirmed he had called in a suicide team. They had less than 90 seconds. Samira didn't ask permission. She adjusted her elevation, inhaled and fired. The round traveled 812 meters through a window, between two wooden slats, and into the man's left eye. He dropped instantly. The girl stumbled back, but remained unharmed. When the team cleared the room, they found a map, detonators, and coordinates. Her CO never said thank you, just stared at her, then said, "That's the kind of shot no one trains for." He was right. Precision wasn't just mechanics, it was judgment, it was trust in yourself when no one else would pull the trigger. Back at the Utah range, Samira stared at the note again. The question wasn't if she could take another impossible shot, it was if she was willing to do it. For people who might never admit she existed. 3 days later, she was on a private military transport, no uniform, no orders filed, flying toward a location not listed on any map. The pilot didn't speak. The flight manifest was blank. Her gear was stored in a locked bin, marked only with the number 47. She landed in Nevada, not at Nellis or Creech. This strip had no name. Just a dirt runway, a steel hangar, and 2 guards who checked her ID without asking what she was doing there, inside the hangar. The man from the SUV waited. He nodded once, handed her another folded paper, and walked away. This one read, "Mission. Simulation. Operation Ice Vein Objective. Neutralize a moving vehicle from 2,100 meters. Unknown direction time limit. 10 minutes from elevation to impact spotter. None permission to fire." You decide it wasn't a test. It was a simulation of the exact kind of mission these units ran: clandestine, silent, autonomous. She stepped into the shooting platform, a modified tower built into the edge of a canyon. Wind screamed through the gaps. Targets moved below, hundreds of feet away, in erratic patterns meant to mimic hostile convoys. Samira scanned the landscape, processed terrain angles, and clocked vehicle speeds. She ran calculations in her head, while her hands loaded the custom rounds. Her face stayed calm. Her mind was electric. At minute 9, a black SUV accelerated across the canyon floor. Weaving between rocks, she exhaled, then fired. The round punched through the windshield and struck the simulated driver square. In the headrest, sensors confirmed the kill. 10 seconds remained. A buzzer sounded from somewhere behind her. Then silence. When she returned to the hangar, no one said a word. No applause, no clipboard, no debrief. Only a locker. Inside was a black case, unmarked. A new rifle, custom-built, no serial number, laser-calibrated scope. Digital wind meter integrated into the stock dot and a single patch. It was gray, shaped like a flame. She didn't ask what it meant. She didn't need to. Samira Torres had just accepted an invitation into a world with no rank, no uniforms, and no safety. Net dot. And in that world, no one cared where you came from. They only cared whether you missed. 3 weeks later, the cold bit hard through her gloves as Samira lay prone on a snowy ridge in Eastern Europe. Below her, in the shadow of jagged mountains, a blacked-out motorcade advanced slowly through a narrow road etched into the hillside. 2 SUVs, 1 armored personnel carrier, a 3rd SUV bringing up the rear. She didn't know the names of the men inside, only their faces. Russian-backed arms brokers, wanted for trafficking stolen NATO tech. The kill order had been signed off, verbally, ever on paper. Her earbud crackled once. Then silence, no commands. No countdown, no spotter dot. This was her mission now. Snow crunched softly beneath her elbow as she shifted position, calculating wind speed from the drifting powder and the rhythm of the branches in the tree line to her left. Her target, the center SUV, reinforced armor, blackout glass. Standard assumptions would say the engine block or the tires, but Samira didn't aim where others would. She aimed at the driver's side mirror. From her distance just over 1,700 meters, the mirror was barely more than a thumbnail in her scope. But if she struck it at the right angle, the impact would create a ricochet wave strong enough to penetrate the window seam and send shattered glass inward at fatal velocity. Unconventional, but possible. The kind of thinking she was recruited for: a sharp inhale, a slow exhale, She fired crack. The round split the air, slicing through snow and wind as the recoil settled into her shoulder like a second heartbeat. She stayed on the scope, unblinking. 1.5 seconds later, the driver's mirror exploded. The SUV jerked left, struck a snowbank, and skidded. The lead vehicle stopped. The rear SUV turned sharply to cover. Through the scope, she saw men exit with rifles raised, but none of them checked the ridge. No one fired back. She had already moved. Within 30 seconds, Samira was 50 meters downslope, disappearing into the forest like a ghost. No one would find her brass. No one would trace the round. The shot would be blamed on locals or rival gangs. Her role would stay buried. That was the nature of her new life. Invisible victories. Silent exits by the time the operation report was delivered through secured channels. The analysts didn't mention her name. They just wrote, "Mirror breach confirmed. High value, target deceased. Civilian casualties, 0. Back in Nevada, the man who'd first handed her the GPS coordinates stood in a dim room watching satellite replay footage. He didn't speak, just watched the glass burst, watched the SUV swerve, watched the exit unfold without a trace. He turned to the analyst behind him. "Send it up," he said. "She's ready for Tier 1 assignments." That same night, the footage of the candle shot leaked online, not the full mission file, just a 30-second clip, shot on a range camera months earlier. Samira lying still, exhaling, then the candle's flame vanishing in a puff of smoke. The video had no name, no background, no unit. Label it, didn't need one. The caption simply read, "Blew out a candle from 2,595 meters. By morning, it had 5 million views. Gun forums lit up. Fake, real, impossible. Who the hell is she?" Some experts broke down the ballistics frame by frame. Others tried recreating the shot. No one succeeded. News outlets picked up the clip. Headlines ranged from OD to skepticism. Unknown shooter stuns military world. Internet debates viral sniper shot. Is this the most precise shot ever caught on video? Back on the base, the Marines still in Utah watched the video over coffee. Bones sat silently as it looped, over and over, her finger squeezing the trigger. The candle, dying without a trace of flame. He smiled slightly. She told us she didn't miss. The Pentagon wasn't amused. The leak wasn't authorized. The video wasn't supposed to exist. A security review launched immediately. Speculations flew. Some higher-ups wanted to reprimand the range officers. Others wanted to find the shooter. The ones who mattered most did neither. They watched. Then picked up a phone. Samira received a secure message 2 days later. Maintain silence. Mission profile elevated. Surveillance increased. Prepare for insertion. No signature. She didn't need one. While the internet exploded with theories, she stayed focused. Every morning she ran drills in silence. No music, no distractions. She practiced wind reads under helicopters, trained with submariners on high humidity, barrel shifts, and ran ballistic scenarios inside freezing walk-in containers. They were preparing her for environments where most shooters fell apart. She was being groomed not to operate within the rules, but to erase the need for them. One night, while polishing the custom rifle from Nevada, she noticed a single engraving. On the barrel she hadn't seen before. It was small, nearly invisible. A stylized flame. The same symbol on the patch they'd given her. She traced it with her fingertip and felt something shift in her chest. Not pride, not fear, clarity. The candle wasn't just a shot. It had become a signal. She hadn't just blown out a flame. She had lit something new. A new way of being a soldier. A new kind of war. And now, with the world buzzing about the shot, the man who placed the original $1,200 bet watched the headlines. With mixed feelings. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't jealous. He was proud, because he knew, better than anyone, that legend didn't grow from winning bets. It grew from proving the impossible, and Samira Torres had done exactly that quietly, cleanly, and with one perfect shot that still echoed around the world. 3 days after the candle shot went viral, Samira's digital footprint was scrubbed clean. No driver's license. No military record. No birth certificate. Even her high school yearbook photo was gone. She didn't just disappear from public view. She disappeared from the government's own files. Her identity was now sealed beneath multiple levels of black classification. Buried under codenames and protocols only a handful of generals could access. And she wasn't on American soil anymore. Samira sat in the back of a Humvee bouncing across the loose gravel roads of northern Syria, hooded in a keffiyeh, armed with a suppressed M110 and a Russian-language field guide. She didn't wear a flag on her uniform, no patch, no insignia. To the villagers, she was another foreigner embedded with an NGO. To the rebels, she was someone you didn't stare at too long. Her mission wasn't combat, at least not officially. It was precision chaos. In 21 days, she eliminated 6 high-ranking militants, none with bullets. One fell from a rooftop with no signs of struggle. Another crashed his motorbike into a ravine after his brakes failed. A third died from heatstroke. Despite a 16 degrees Celsius day, each death had no witnesses, no obvious causes, and no one connected them, except one man. He was the 7th. They called him Nitsa Al-Jamal, former Syrian colonel turned insurgent tactician, smart, brutal, always moving. He ran entire networks of improvised drone strikes and weapons caches across borders. His safe houses shifted weekly. He used couriers. Never electronics. Tracking him was nearly impossible. Killing him would mean disrupting 3 enemy operations across the region. And that's why they sent her, Samira. Tracked his convoy for 5 days before he slipped into the ancient ruins of Palmyra. Satellite coverage was thin. Ground teams couldn't get close. She went in alone, at sunset. She crawled for 2 hours across jagged sandstone until she reached the top of a forgotten Roman arch. Wind hissed through broken pillars as she scanned the shattered plaza below. There, half hidden by vines, was Nitsa surrounded by guards, drinking tea. Fully relaxed. The range was 1,325 meters. Simple for her, but she didn't take the shot. Instead, she waited at 2:17 a.m. He moved behind a column to relieve himself, alone, half asleep. She adjusted elevation by 2 clicks. Factored in the moon's gravity pull, which shifted slightly. That week, due to high-altitude winds, even the air temperature was dropping fast, which would affect the round's trajectory. She fired once, a small sound, no flash. The bullet entered just behind his right ear. He dropped silently between shadows. By the time his guards realized he was gone, Samira had already packed up and faded into the dust. Again, no one saw her, but people began to whisper. In the following weeks, 3 more insurgents died under strange conditions. One was struck by a falling drone battery. Another was hit in the throat by a flying bolt during training. One choked on a cigarette filter lodged in his windpipe. Military blogs began calling it the phantom string. The pattern was too exact. 2. Surgical. Someone, somewhere, was tying off loose ends. They didn't know it was Samira, but they knew it wasn't luck. One night, as she waited on a dirt roof in Iraq, preparing for her next target, she received a secure radio message. It wasn't an order, it was a request. Return to Germany. Immediate briefing. Extraction point. Frankfurt rail station. Code word, lantern. That was all. 12 hours later, she was on a private flight over the Alps, cold and silent in her seat, sipping water while the world below spun on, unaware. In Germany, they took her not to a base, but to a deep concrete facility beneath a bakery. Inside, waiting for her, was a man in a grey suit with a scar beneath his eye and a pentagon clearance badge. He didn't introduce himself. He just placed a black folder on the table. Operation Candlelight. Samira raised an eyebrow. Named after the video, he smirked. Partly, mostly because you work best in the dark. Inside the folder was a single sheet. One name, one photo, no other details. Her next mission, but this one was different. The target wasn't an insurgent, it was a defector, an American. Former Navy cryptologist. He'd vanished 5 years ago, surfaced last month in Istanbul, and was now selling strategic access codes to hostile states. He knew the US wouldn't arrest him on foreign soil, but he didn't know about her. They didn't say the words. They didn't need to neutralize. Samira closed the folder, stood up, and nodded once. But as she turned to leave, the man added one last detail. This time, it'll be public. We want the world to see it. She stopped. Why? Because fear, he said, works better than secrecy now. It's time they knew what happens when they cross the line. Outside, a fresh snow had started to fall. Samira pulled on her gloves and stepped into the cold, ready for a shot the world would not only see but remember. Samira stepped off the train in Istanbul, like any tourist. A black backpack, light jacket, and sunglasses to shield her identity. Crowds moved around her in waves, but she moved like water unseen. Her eyes scanned every reflection, every rooftop, every doorway. She already knew the target's route. David Kessler, the American defector, was due to arrive at the Haydarpaka Palace Hotel for a private arms conference disguised as a defense summit. Turkish authorities had been paid to look the other way. Kessler was arrogant now, untouchable. And that's what made him sloppy. Samira checked into a nearby building under the alias Alina Vasquez, a Colombian journalist. The room she chose had a direct sightline to the conference hall's West Terrace, where Kessler was expected to greet attendees with champagne just before sunset. She had 48 hours to set the stage. Her gear was already stashed. A modified Chat M200 intervention, chambered in .408. With a lightweight folding stock and a custom suppressor. It had been shipped in pieces under separate names and arrived through diplomatic courier trick she had used before. Every night, she tested conditions, she timed wind shifts, she mapped heat signatures, and she studied Kessler's routine down to the second dot. At 6:14 p.m. on the third day, she watched through her scope as he stepped out, grinning, drink in hand, flanked by 2 Eastern European guards with visible sidearms. Around them, 30 dignitaries laughed and posed for photos. Unaware of what was about to unfold, Samira exhaled slowly. Distance, 1,942 meters. Wind, 2.1 knots westward. Barometric pressure, rising. She held her breath, then squeezed. The bullet traveled. For over 4 seconds, Kessler's glass shattered first dot, then a second delay. Barely noticeable before his head snapped back and his body folded over the railing. Panic erupted on the terrace. Screams, shouts, people hitting the ground. The guards looked confused. There was no sound from the shot. No echo. Nothing to trace. Only one thing remained. A clean, still body with a 1/4-inch hole through his left eye. The kill was surgical. Samira had already packed a weapon and moved into the alley behind the hotel by the time Turkish police arrived. She wore a headscarf, pretended to panic, and ran with the crowd. No one questioned her. No one noticed her. She was gone before the cameras turned, but this time, she was the camera. She had placed a hidden drone in an upper balcony across the terrace. It had captured everything. The angle, the impact, the stillness. Even Kessler's eyes widening a half-second before the hit. The video was immediately uploaded to a secure channel. Within 2 hours, it was leaked to the open web under the name Operation Candlelight. The video didn't have music. No narration, no graphics, just silence, a man dying, and a message at the end. You don't run, you don't hide, you answer. It spread like wildfire. Within hours, it hit Twitter, Reddit, Telegram, military forums, and YouTube. Major outlets refused to run it, but the internet made sure the world saw it anyway. Tens of millions watched the footage by sunrise. Speculation exploded. Some thought it was fake. Others insisted it was CIA, or Mossad, or a private kill squad. But a few trained eyes recognized the style, the range, the signature. They remembered the candle shot, and now they connected the dots. A post on a military forum read, "Only one person in the world can make that shot from that angle with that weapon. The girl from Utah, the candle. She's not a legend, she's a weapon." Back in Washington, top Pentagon officials had mixed feelings. The mission was successful. The leak had sent shockwaves through enemy networks. Several other known defectors vanished into hiding. Embassies in hostile territories went on alert. But now the US had a new problem. Samira Torres was famous. For the first time, they couldn't control the narrative. Her name wasn't in the footage, but the public connected the threads. News anchors interviewed former snipers. Old instructors hinted about her skills without confirming anything. Even a popular TV host said, "She's like America's shadow. If James Bond were real and a woman, this would be her." Meanwhile, Samira was already out of Istanbul, moving quietly through Greece, en route to a base in Germany. In her hand was a small envelope. Inside it, a list of 5 new targets. But when she reached the safe house, the usual handlers weren't there. Instead, a man stood alone, wearing a brown military overcoat with no rank insignia. He said nothing, just handed her a phone. On the other end, a voice she hadn't heard before. Female.com/sharp. "You've done your part. It's time to decide." "Decide what?" Samira asked. "Whether you want to keep killing for us," the voice replied, "or lead something bigger." Samira stayed silent for a moment, thinking. Then she asked, "What's the mission?" The voice paused, then answered, "Change the battlefield." And for the first time in her career, Samira didn't feel like a sniper anymore. She felt like a movement. 6 weeks after Istanbul, Samira Torres sat across from 6 shadowed figures in an underground war room outside Ramstein Air Base. The table was oval, the lights dim, and the screens displayed no flags. This wasn't a US operation. It wasn't NATO. It was deeper. The Forge. A clandestine cell built for one thing: shaping battlefield minds before boots ever landed. The woman on the end leaned forward. "We're not asking you to keep pulling the trigger," she said. "We're asking you to build the ones who will." Samira didn't respond right away. She understood power. She had seen it misused. But she also saw the future. With every viral clip of her silent kills, her ghosted footprints, and her name whispered across black sites and foreign barracks, the world was shifting. No longer was warfare about overwhelming firepower. It was about precision, psychology, disruption, and Samira had become the blueprint. They offered her what no sniper had ever received: command of a new experimental task force, Unit Vespa. Its mission was unorthodox. Small cells, high accuracy, global reach. Operatives would be trained not just to shoot, but to think like shadows, ghosting borders, disrupting coups, toppling warlords without headlines. Samira accepted, but with 2 conditions. First, no national allegiance. Unit Vespa would serve humanity, not politics. Second, no public face. Her name, her image, her voice all vanished. From that moment forward, Samira Torres no longer existed. The Pentagon erased her file. She became a codename, Scythe. Under her command, Vespa grew from a table of 10 to a fleet of 60, operating across 5 continents. Recruits were hand-picked quiet minds, focused eyes, no thirst for fame. She trained them herself in remote Arctic sites, South American jungles, even under abandoned French cathedrals. Each sniper learnt the candle shot for show, but for control. Mira taught them to wait hours without movement, to feel the Earth's breath before pulling a trigger, to understand when not to shoot. She wasn't making assassins. She was crafting instruments of stability. The first Vespa operation came quietly. Mozambique. A child militia leader, trained and protected by a network of foreign arms brokers, had begun executing teachers who resisted conscription. No one would touch him. Vespa did. Samira oversaw the mission from a ship off the coast. 1 shot. No bodies found. The child disappeared, later found under UN protection. Safe and clean, it didn't make headlines. But intelligence agencies noticed. Then came Dhaka, Tegucigalpa, and Sana. Each time, no trace. No witnesses, just balance restored, and still, the legend of the candle sniper grew. She hadn't been seen in years. But every long-range mystery kill sparked online theories. TikTok made fan videos. YouTube documentaries popped up with red string and drone breakdowns. Podcasts debated the flame theory, and someone wrote a novel, The Woman Who Breathes Wind. The author claimed it was fiction, but it wasn't far off. Inside Vespa, new recruits whispered about her like myth. Did she really take the Istanbul shot without a spotter? Is it true she trained with Mongolian archers? Can she hear heartbeat changes before a person moves? Samira never corrected them, because she understood, legends protect missions. If she became too real, she became vulnerable. So she faded even further, until one day, something changed. A quiet girl named Lonnie, 17 years old, half Cambodian, fluent in 4 languages, made her first 2,600-meter shot. Samira stood behind her, watching. Lonnie stayed still, unblinking. When the candle flickered out, the girl didn't cheer, she just whispered, "What now?" Samira smiled. "Now you light someone else's." That was the moment she knew. Her time in the field was over. Samira passed operational command to her top student, and vanished deeper into the forge. Her work continued overseas, underground and unseen. But once a year, she returned to the Utah desert. The same range, the same table, the same place where $1,200 tried to doubt her. She would set up a candle at 2,595 meters. And each time, a new recruit would try. Some missed, some hesitated, some cried. But eventually, one of them would make the shot. And when they did, Samira would walk over, light another candle, and leave without a word. One day, that too stopped. No one knew where she went. Rumors said she took a name and a family far from war. Others claimed she joined the monastery in Nepal. Some believed she never existed at all, until 5 years later. An anonymous donation funded a full scholarship program at the U.S. Marine Scout Sniper School for women only. The scholarship was named the 2,595 Flame. No interviews, no reviews, no sponsors, just one motto carved into a plaque at the range. She didn't silence the candle to prove a shot. She did it to start a fire. And that's how it ended. No parades, no medals, no ranks, just a woman, a rifle, and a story that still burned across every inch of the battlefield. Samira Torres wasn't the best because she shot the farthest. She was the best because she knew why.